Hey guys, Marcus Melnick here with Firearm Mentor. Hope you're enjoying my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. These little things are free to you and really help the channel. I appreciate your support. Enjoy. Thank you.
The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host. And today I've got on the show Lindsay Coulter. And Lindsay is a relationship coach, a marriage consultant, and she operates a business called Marital Arts, like martial arts, but spelled a little different. Lindsay, thank you very much for appearing on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Marcus. It's good to be here.
Can you tell everyone, what is your origin story? How did you get to be a marriage consultant focusing on relationships? What was your journey?
I've been kind of thinking about this a lot because I remember the first time that I don't know if this has ever happened to you, where you remember the exact place that you were, the exact situation you were in, where you saw your future. And you're like, that's right. Like my destiny, or what we call dharma, I am here to work with families going through divorce, families that are struggling with their emotional relationships, with their ability to communicate, with their ability to feel safe and secure with each other. And I remember that exact moment. I think I was in graduate school or about to be in graduate school. I started studying psychology when I was about 17 years old. And I don't know if you're from Northbrook. I'm from Northbrook. And we had AP classes. Being in that class and being with that professor was the first time I ever had this kind of like spark of passion. Being in the place where I'm from, I'm surrounded by very passionate, very talented individuals. And I was always, okay, where's mine? Where's my passion? And really that was being in that class. I was like, wow, like I love psychology. I love the invisible forces going on underneath our actions, behaviors, the facade that we have. So I think those are kind of the two things. It was like when I first fell in love with psychology, and then when I first kind of just was like, okay, this is where this is taking you and this is where you're going to go. And specifically working with families, my parents are divorced as well. It hasn't been super contentious like other people's situations, but still it affected our family a lot and kind of changed our trajectory as a family. And so there's like a very personal, deep desire for families to get along and get through some of the harder times with a lot more support and guidance and tools and skills, which luckily we have so much of that these days.
Terrific. Where did you go to school? College? Where did you go to college and grad school?
I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I studied psychology there. I finished with a BA in psychology. And then I went to graduate school in Chicago at the School of the Art Institute, and I finished with art therapy, a master's in art therapy.
GBN or GBS?
GBN.
Okay.
Cool.
Talk about being a wedding officiant. How did you become one? Can you tell us about some of the ceremonies you've performed?
That is a completely new thing as of July, actually. So I have performed 0 at this point.
Oh, okay.
If you want to be my first, reach out to me. I'm ready for you. I can't wait. But I just became ordained in July because I'm doing all this marriage therapy, and I'm looking at the beginning and what could we have given to these couples at the beginning, right at the start, to really help them create like a solid, aligned foundation so that when they are going through these very specific marriage milestones that we kind of have mapped out, they have that understanding. They're ready for it. They have the skills, the tools, they've learned what they need to kind of navigate marriage in a healthier way. So awesome. That whole brand is new just in July.
Well, that makes perfect sense. For example, I was teaching about the human stress response as an outflow of my experience with law enforcement, and someone asked me, well, what's your background in that? Well, a career in law enforcement. I didn't have any credentials, so I became a stress and anxiety coach so that I could have that credential. I totally understand what you did. I think it's great. And Lindsay is quite worldly. Can you tell everyone about your time in Guatemala and other international travel?
I was gone for like 5.5 years. So sometimes I say I went on a spiritual quest. That quest is now over. I think I just really needed to see the world. I didn't realize I was kind of like a very soft, tender suburban girl until I went out into the rest of the world and saw a lot of things and experienced a lot of things. And Guatemala holds a very special place in my heart. I did a lot of yoga there. I taught yoga. I trained in yoga. I trained in breath work there, or yogic breath work. I worked at a retreat center there. I did psychedelic assisted therapy there. I did some sound healing, sound training there. I also did some customer journey skills training there. I worked with a hotel called Amate Atitlan and worked with the team there. So that was Guatemala. Super fun. I don't know what else you want to know. I was in Mexico for a long time.
I do have some Guatemala questions.
Yeah.
Did you work in any of the prisons there?
No, God, no.
Okay.
I was in like a traditional village that's been turned into like a hippie enclave, yoga studios everywhere.
Okay.
Like,
so it's safe.
very
it's safe.
Pretty much for the most part.
So there's a reason why I'm asking. What language did you take at GBN?
I speak Spanish pretty well.
Okay. Do you remember Senor Donde, Jeff Ware, who's a Spanish teacher there?
Of course. He's the best. The teacher, and my experience with him, he was a life-changing Spanish teacher. He taught me so much. I can still reiterate some of his mnemonic devices for remembering different tenses. He was fantastic. What do you know about him, or why you're asking?
Well, I've known him for over 52 years because he's my cousin.
Oh, nice. Yes. Okay, awesome.
So, and the reason why I'm asking you this is not the GBN connection. Actually, when he retired, Hope Renewed International was an organization that he was the executive director of, and he lived in Guatemala for 5 years recently. And he worked in the prison, and he's, just for the listeners, he's a born-again Christian, he's a minister, and he brought the liturgy to people in prisons and helped them. And he did that for 5 years, going back and forth from the Chicago area down to Guatemala. Now he's back. But that's why I asked if you worked in prisons, because he worked in prisons, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if you got recruited or what the story was.
So interesting. I always adored him, really.
He's excellent. Fantastic. He's like the epitome of what a good Christian should be.
Yeah.
And I love the guy. I love the whole family, but I just saw him a week ago. You got this worldly experience, as you described yourself, the soft suburban girl, and now you're gangster. I'm kidding. It's a joke. But you can see how there's a lot of adversity in the world, and not everything is all peachy, which I'm sure helps you as a therapist. On one of your websites, you talked about the Gottman method. What is the Gottman method?
If you've never heard of that at all, we could basically just say there are two amazing psychology researchers out there. They are married. Their name are John and Julie Gottman, and they have an extensive body of research over 50 years, decades and decades of research on what makes marriages thrive, what are kind of our masters in relationships, and what are our disasters in relationships, is what they say. Together, their kind of power partnership has created this amazing body of work and tools and practices and skills that when you use them as a couples therapist, you see the benefits so immediately. And it ties in so exquisitely with just emotional intelligence education and social intelligence training. I really am such a fan. I'm trained, and I have nothing but good things to say about them, and I use it pretty much daily in my work.
What is psychedelic assisted therapy? Is that like you're eating shrooms or something?
Well, you're actually completely correct.
Really?
Yeah. It's the word psychedelic is kind of an umbrella term for a lot of different substances. They're completely separate. If you think about ketamine versus MDMA versus psilocybin, or what we call magic mushrooms, versus ayahuasca, which is a jungle, Brazilian and Peruvian and other types of Central South American plant medicines is what we would call that. These are kind of all under the umbrella of psychedelic assisted therapy, because psychedelics means like this kind of like window into your psyche, this microscope into you as like a psychological person, you with a mind and with consciousness. So psychedelic assisted therapy is using any of those types of tools to accelerate the process of therapy, or to aid the process of therapy, to assist the process of therapy. And I don't know if you've read any research or you're kind of up to date on how that's kind of coming forth in the world right now. It really, it's an ancient practice. If you think about shamans and plant medicines and all over the world, that's a very ancient practice, is to use plants to assist in maybe dream work or vision work, or kind of tapping into the unseen forces that exist in and around us. But, in the Western world, we're really looking at kind of like the 1950s, and researchers and psychologists bringing in magic mushrooms and LSD into the therapeutic process, bringing in MDMA more towards the 70s and 80s. Ketamine kind of has come along these days, but it's been around for a long time, or I should say a long time, like since the 70s, 60s, I guess 60s. It kind of got cut off, that research, those psychologists using this legally in the 50s and the 60s, and now we're like seeing kind of a renaissance of people doing research in our own backyard. There's actually in Skokie a psychedelic assisted therapy research clinic in Chicago. Different education and university systems are getting permission to experiment and do research on these things again. And so I am ethically trained specifically in psychedelic assisted therapy through the Integrative Psychiatry Institute in Denver, Colorado, or Boulder. But I'm also kind of like unofficially trained through like shamanic work in Guatemala and Mexico, and kind of like these neo-shamanic people showing up where it's like they're not kind of from like the jungle or from a traditional lineage, but they're therapists and other types of yogis, and they're kind of like taking on this role as people who work with those pretty powerful ways of doing therapies.
I had no idea that was a thing. No clue.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, it's happening.
Do the people then, obviously this is under supervision, but do they take whatever substance it is, it doesn't matter, and then go to a therapy session, and then they're more forthcoming? That's my perception. Is that accurate?
I mean, it's really, again, very different, because these substances are used for very different things, in my opinion. Like if you were to go to an ayahuasca ceremony, that's going to be a group event. You're sitting in what we call like a maloka, which is kind of like a temple. And depending on who you're working with, that situation is going to look very different. And even the experience you have of that plant medicine is going to be very different. For instance, like if you're in the jungle in Peru, you might see some visions of like panthers and snakes and jungle like visions. And then if you're in, like I've experienced in Guatemala, like in a kind of like safe container with like some Australians who are yogis, and you're in more of like a temple setting that's more of like a yogic approach, but again kind of like a Westerner's take on that, it's going to be very different.
Interesting. Wow. What is a love futurist, and can you talk about your values?
That's something that kind of came to me in the last year as I looked at what I call shaping the future of love, or shaping love. I say to people all the time, you have to like teach people how to love you sometimes. They're not going to always know that love is a verb, love is a skill, love is something that we do. It's really this attempt to shape the conversation around love and marriage and relationships and couples therapy in this light around what is this thing called love? How do we understand it? And how do we do it in a way that is healthy, happy, safe, connected? I think it has a lot to do, just like full disclosure, with like AI and robots and like, like I use a lot of technology language in my newsletter. I have a newsletter called Love Futurism. And as we're kind of like moving into this AI robot world in the next, who knows how many years, like what keeps us human, right? Like love is at the center of what it means to be human. And so what does that really mean, and how are we doing that human thing and not kind of that robot thing? And is that important? And do we want to keep it? Or should we just become cyborgs? And
Right.
is like, those are kind of the
Unemotional.
questions.
Yeah.
Those are the things I think about.
Which is great because everyone has their area of expertise. It's not an area that I think about, but that's why I bring people like you on the show, because I don't have knowledge there. I know how to ask questions. What would a premarital session or curriculum or what does that look like?
So exciting for me. Let's maybe think about this first piece. My brand is called Aligned Newlyweds. And the goal here is that by the time you are a newlywed, you are aligned. And so that alignment means we're setting this foundation, right? If you think about a house, we're going to build that house on a solid foundation. And part of that foundation is really understanding, like, what are your core values as a person, as an individual? And then what are the values you have as in a relationship, and that those marriage values that you're coming together, right? They have their own values, you have yours. Especially in the United States, we have this phenomenon of multicultural relationships. And so what are you kind of bringing together here in your marriage? How do you be intentional about that? How do you bring that to the surface? How do you talk about kind of what you're fighting for instead of getting caught up in what you're fighting against? So a lot of the work that I do is around that values piece, understanding them, talking about them, comparing and contrasting them, honoring each other's different values. That would be a lot of the first kind of piece. And then we'll go into emotions and what we call meta emotions, really learning about how do we practice and experience emotions? How does the other person in our marriage experience and practice emotions? What's our understanding or our shared understanding of how we're going to practice the art of emotions together? So those are just like a kind of two modules that I could describe there.
Very good. So this is a question, it's a follow-up, and it's kind of, I didn't plan on asking, but it's burning in my head. What happens in a relationship that's ending, in a marriage that's ending is what I'm trying, that's the context. When do two people really grow apart, or does time reveal the true person underneath? You know, like when you go on a first date, you're on your best behavior, and then all of a sudden you're allowed to pick your nose in front of the other person, 5 years down the road. And I made that up. It's gross. I know it. But do you see what I mean there? Do
Yeah,
people
of
actually
course.
grow apart, or are they just more of their core is revealed throughout a relationship?
I feel like I understand what you're asking me. You're like, do people grow apart, or do they start to see things in each other that they didn't notice in the first place, and now they're like, oh, we're not
Yes.
compatible? Is that kind of... let's maybe just look at biology first and foremost, and the difference between biology and society. Maybe this is like a long way of kind of answering your question, but like biologically, we are wired to pair bond, and that means becoming a pair together, right? Bonding in this emotional attachment, maybe having children together, starting a family is normal. We're biologically wired for that. We also have a society that wants stability and wants economic agreements between people and contracts, and an understanding that these two people take care of each other for life. They build a family together that, again, aids in the stability of our society, hopefully. Like, those two things are not always compatible in and of themselves. So it's normal in kind of like our ancient biology for us to pair bond, and then actually pair bond again in our reproductive years. And so if you think about our biology up against our societal kind of norms and expectations, those things don't always align. And some people are more monogamous, right? They're willing to just say, like, one person forever,
Right.
Let's go. I will stay loyal to that idea, and that anything that might disrupt that, I'm going to suppress, ignore, or just like not be interested in. But most of our biology is wired for this kind of other type of experience. So you'll see a lot of affairs during the reproductive years. You'll see a lot of that kind of betrayal stuff where people are looking outside of their marriage for certain things. And, we could get into more of that, but I think I'm kind of answering your
Yes,
question.
you
and
are.
then this you had this sense of like, do we grow apart? It's like, well, were we ever meant to grow together for life in the first place? Sometimes.
Okay. I get that. And you may not know this, but I am divorced and remarried, and so is my wife. So we have a blended family. And it leads me into the next question of do you work with blended families like post-marriage?
Yeah, of course.
What are some of the challenges?
I would say step parenting is a challenge. The way that things end, it can start a challenge in and of itself, right? If those things aren't processed, which I think divorce in and of itself is a difficult thing to process. I work a lot with the process of forgiveness. What does forgiveness actually look like in that separation, in that divorce? What does that mean for your kids, depending on developmentally how capable they are of understanding forgiveness? Do we come together as co-parents in a way that is healthy for ourselves and for our kids? Or are we still kind of bringing the same problems we had in our relationship into that co-parenting relationship? These are kind of some of the questions, some of the ways that we're thinking about divorce and then blended families. And then like step parenting in and of itself is like its own journey. And it's unique to all of the parents and kids that are kind of going through that, kind of how you get to a place of stability together, living situations, different personalities. We work with the family system overall and how that's functioning.
That kind of leads into, what is emotional safety?
It's funny because I've been talking about emotional safety for a long time, and I've actually started to shift the conversation to this word co-regulation. Have you heard that word before?
No, but I know I can understand what it means. But why don't you explain it in case someone doesn't?
We are a nervous system. You have a nervous system. I have a nervous system. I'm sure you've taught this and trained people in kind of understanding their stress response system. I teach people in understanding their social engagement system. So when we look at the nervous system and how it's kind of striated or broken up, it's like that stress response system is there to detect threat and to make sure that we're safe. It's there to protect us. But then there's this whole other side called the social engagement system, which is there to help us connect. It's about play, intimacy, sexuality, being close to each other physically, emotionally. And so through the social engagement system, we're working actually with this idea of co-regulation, which means using certain things inside of our own body, nervous system, to help create a sense of emotional safety within that other person. So co-regulation looks like tone of voice. It looks like graceful communication. It looks like gently starting up difficult conversations. It looks like repair. So maybe if we're in the moment of conflict, or we were in the moment of conflict, how do we repair that conflict? It's a lot of body language. It's a lot of trust and building trust through the process of trust being ruptured and then repairing it correctly. I use my tone of voice a lot. in we are exquisitely attuned to some of these things: tone of voice, body language, how things are said, what's being said. And so you have to kind of take responsibility for your impact on someone else's emotional safety by noticing how you affect them with those things. And so the art of co-regulation is saying, I want my body, my nervous system, what's happening in me, to regulate yours, and for yours to regulate me in this kind of a reciprocal dance. When you're stressed, I can kind of be strong and help you hold it together. When I'm stressed, you can do the same for me.
Right.
And that means a lot of doing your own work as well, in terms of keeping your stress levels at a reasonable level, which I know is very hard for everyone, especially in the area that we are in, or everywhere around the world, probably.
And you're hitting it right on the head. You're talking about me, and you don't even know you're talking about me, which is good. What are your views on uncoupling?
I do talk about conscious uncoupling. It goes into a little bit of this, when you're going through the process of separation or divorce, how are you thinking about things? Are you thinking about things in a way that leads to a conscious, peaceful resolution? Are you thinking about things in a way that leads to war and battles and fighting and continuing on with kind of your bad behavior? And those are two very different pathways, right? So when we're uncoupling, I talk about it in that way to really bring a sense of consciousness around endings are okay, actually. Like, endings are important and normal and can be honored just as maybe deeply as the beginning. You know, some people are even having like uncoupling parties or celebrations, or kind of like, how are they honoring like the end? I always like thought in my own life, like, I wish that my family had a photo album of like not just the good times but also the bad times.
Right.
Like, can I see like the divorce photos? Like, where is that in the family photo album? Like, what the heck? Just
Well, it is
was
part
like,
of the history.
right?
I mean, it's
like,
true.
just because it was like negative or whatever, like, put it in there.
Right, exactly. What final thoughts can you offer about what you do? And maybe I didn't ask you something that I should have asked you, because it's your area of expertise and not mine. The floor is yours.
The main thing that I'm trying to do in my couples therapy sessions, and I'm trying to help people understand, is like how their biology is working against them and how we can help control, manage, or regulate that biology in a way that's going to lead to better relationships. And so we work a lot with like the negative sentiment override is what we call it. It's like people get in their minds and in their nervous systems like this negativity, waiting for that other person to do something that's going to upset them.
Right.
Even somebody can say something neutral, but like we file it into like negative or threat. And you've probably seen this a lot with police officers as well. It's like
absolutely.
the kind of like unconscious bias, the negative, right? I am to see threat. And so how do we turn that story around, get into a positive sentiment override? And what I say, like, control the narrative, right? Like, you have the ability to say to yourself on a daily basis and to say to your partner, wow, I really respect you. I admire you. I appreciate you. I see what you're doing. That's good, right? Like, I'm not just focused on like the fact that you didn't do the dishes and the kitchen's a mess, right? Like, I'm also saying like, thanks so much for putting our kids to bed on time every night. Like, thanks so much for whatever it is. So that's kind of my last little tip for you and all your audience and listeners.
Sounds good. What can you share how people can get a hold of you if they need your services, and just your location, your website, your social media, however you would like to be contacted?
I've been remote. I'm online. I'm virtual for many, many years now. I see couples virtually. I also do have an office in Northbrook, Illinois, that I see couples there. And then I also have a website. It's www.lindsaybrockcoulter.com. You can visit me there. You can kind of look at how I'm thinking about things. You can join my newsletter if you like. Yeah, I have a new website as well for marital arts. I have a Facebook group, a page. That's really how you would find me, Marital Arts or Lindsay Brock Coulter.
It's been an absolute pleasure and honor speaking with you today, Lindsay. Thank you for appearing on the show.
Yeah, you too. I love your radio voice, Marcus. It's awesome.
It's
It put me at so much ease. Yeah, it's really good.
Very good. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.